How to create an animated video title using Shotcut's overlay HTML filter. Part 4. Animating individual letters. Welcome to part 4. Now in this part I'm going to show you how to make this animation. Now you may have noticed that I've changed the location for this one. We're moving to Venice in Italy. I'm a little bit tired of London. Only joking, of course. Now I'm assuming that you have followed the previous 3 parts of my tutorial and therefore you will know a little bit about HTML. So I'm going to try and explain things in quite a concise way, and I'm going to build up my HTML file from scratch. Okay, now here is a very basic HTML file which, as you know, gives you a large purple box. And here's what I put in next. I'll just talk you through these. So starting from the bottom, you can see that inside the full screen box div I've put another div called blue template, and just above there we can see the CSS of that. It has a width of 1000 pixels, height of 200, background of blue, and it's centered inside the purple box. And underneath that I've given it a font size of 150 pixels and a text align center. Then if we go above, just underneath where it says body, I've put in a div CSS with the common attributes, which is position absolute, font family Arial, color white, text shadow. You can see the result on the bottom right of your screen. Now I've made a green text container below with a width of 900, height of 180 and a background color of green. And it's centered inside the blue box. There it is. Next I put top minus 300 pixels in the blue template to make the blue box go a little bit higher, and inside the green text container div I add another div which I call letter 01, and I also add some CSS for letter 01 above it with font size of 150 pixels and a background color of dodgy blue. As you can see, the letter V appears towards the left of the green container. Now what I do next is add another div also called letter 01 below the first div, and I'm going to put a letter E on that one. And if you notice, we see the letter E towards the left. Now this is because the letter E appears above the letter V, so you can't see the letter V. Now to rectify this we need to learn a new technique. Look on our CSS for the letter 01 and I've put in display inline block and position relative. Very important. Now that gives us this, where the 2 letters V and the E appear next to each other in line. Next I put in 4 more divs to complete the spelling of the word Venice, and there's the result. But if you look closely, there's a very small gap in between each of the letters of the word Venice, and the green box below shows through. Now to solve this I just add font size 0 at the end of the green text container, and as you can see it gets rid of all the gaps. Good. Next I want to move my text along, and I used my blue template as a guide, and I changed the left here to left 300 for the green text container. It's an important point here. I'm going to move the letters along by actually moving the green text container, and all the letters will be moved as well. Now I find after a bit of trial and error that a figure of 333 pixels makes the text centered. Now I want to get rid of the blue template, so I simply put a opacity 0 at the end of the blue template line of code. Then I make the green, the blue and the dodgy blue transparent by putting hash signs in. Now I'm going to move up the word Venice by putting in top minus 100 in the green text container code. Now I'm going to start to animate the first letter. I'm going to just make it fade in, so I write in there some opacity 0s and 1s. Next I copy and paste those keyframes to every single letter of the word Venice, which of course makes the whole word fade in one go. There it is. Now you'll have to look carefully for the next stage. Can you see I've slightly changed the middle values of each of the keyframes there? And also I've changed the start times here. My aim is to get each letter to fade in at a slightly different time to the others, and it works because here is the result. I'll just show you that again. There we are. Good. Now the next thing I'm going to do is to change the font. So I've opened Print My Fonts and I'm going to find a suitable font. I think there is one there. Very nice. Bradley Hand ITC. So I'm going to write that in the code after font family. There we are. I shall make the font a little bit bigger and adjust the positioning until the word Venice is centered exactly as I want it. Next, I want to create an orange box like this one and then move it down below the title. This is going to be a container for my subtitle text. To create it, I make a copy of the green text container and then I create a div for it below and independent of the green text container. I move it down by giving it a top value of 200. Then I copy all of this code and paste it inside the orange text container. I give it an ID of letter 02, change the V to a G, then I put a comma here and letter 02. Then I create another CSS section and put in here font size 150 pixels. Then put opacity 1 and this is the result. Then I copy all this and paste it below many times. And then I change the letters accordingly to spell out gateway to Italy. Now notice when I get to a space I put in a hash sign. And here's the result so far. Now of course the text overflows its container, so to rectify that we change the dimensions of the orange box to a width of 1400 pixels, and here's a result with the text inside the orange box. Now I have to make the hash signs transparent to give us the text spaces. We put opacity 0 in there and center the orange box by putting left 300 in there. Make the orange color transparent and it's all looking quite good. Now take a look at this code here. I've spent some time editing the code. Now take a look at the left hand column of the percentages and you can see that they are varied. I've changed them quite randomly and they're all approximately around the 20% mark. Also take a look at the start figures. They're varied as well and they range from about 0.07 to about 0.11. And the whole idea of this is to achieve an effect where the different letters fade in at different times. And here's the result. Now my next job is to put this coloured bar across the screen. Now the colour of this is actually tomato. You may remember this from part 1. Now the purpose of this coloured bar is to contain some white boxes that are going to fly across the screen. So I'm going to call it Tomato Boxes Container. Snappy title. And there it is. It's a copy of the orange text container. Although I've coloured it tomato and it's a width of 1200 pixels and a height of 80 pixels. Now inside this tomato coloured container I want to have a row of small white boxes, so I'm going to begin to put the first one in now. So I set up a div inside the tomato boxes container and I call it small white box, and I create some CSS code, also called small white box, with a width of 20, a height of 20 and background white, and that produces this. I write in opacity 0 here and I write some code in to animate the box from left to right, from 0% to 98%, and the result is this. Now I copy this code below and change the value to 90%, which gives this. And just to check, if I change the tomato colour to transparent by adding a hash sign, we get this. Next I copy this animation code many times and I change the values, reducing them 10% at a time, so it's 90%, 80%, 70%, 60% and so on, down to 0. And here's the result. And as you can see, those small white boxes make a really nice pattern as they fly across the screen. Right, I'm going to fast forward a few minutes now and show you that I've changed the code slightly of the small white boxes. Okay, now I've changed the keyframes and put in some extra percentages. Now I'll just get the text a little larger. There we are. And I'm going to concentrate on the first small white box. So I'll talk you through some of the figures that I've changed just on the first small white box. So at 0% of the time it was left 0. In other words, completely to the left of the tomato box. Then at 17% it goes right across to the right, 100%. Stays there through 60%, 66%, and at 66% it starts to move its way back to the left 0 position. Now what I'm going to do is to isolate that small white box for you by hiding the code of all the other boxes from the browser. And I do this by putting in an open tag symbol, then an exclamation mark and 2 hyphens. And can you see that all the text below goes grey? And then if I go to here and put in 2 hyphens and then an end of tag symbol, the text below it comes alive again, and all the grey code is hidden from the browser. Now that's great, because if I run that in Chrome I get this, which is just the one small white box, and I can show its journey. So it goes all the way across to the right and then it goes back again to the left and fades out at the same time. Now if I delete that and copy it down to there, I can show you the first 2 white boxes. So run that in Chrome and here it comes, and the first 2 white boxes go across. Now the second white box only goes till 90%, then it goes across to 100, and then the 2 white boxes go back. Now if you look carefully at the keyframe percentages, you'll see something interesting. On the first small white box, the third and fourth numbers were 60% and 66, and on the second box they are 62% and 68. Each one is 2% larger than the previous box, and that's how you get the synchronized movement of the boxes. Now I'll do the same thing, just isolate the first 3 boxes for you, and this is what it looks like when we run it. There we go. And the third box goes across to 80% of the time, and then it will go 2% later than the second box across to 100 and back again. And if you look clearly at the percentages, the third box is 64 and 70, 2% later than the second box. So I hope you understand what's going on there. Now I'm just going to unhide all of the other code and just to show you that every other box moves in a similar way, each one moving 2% later. So the last box will start moving at 80% and 86. And there we are, our final result for the white boxes. Looking good. Just wait a second. Fantastic. Now we're nearly there now. I just want to show you what I've done to the code to make the letters fade out at the end. Take a look at my final animation. There we go, the line goes across and the letters fade out at the end at different times. There they go, Venice and then Gateway to Italy. A gentle fading out effect. Now look at the code and you can see that I achieved this by just putting in random numbers for the fade out. So for example, the first letter fades out from 60% to 80%, the second letter fades out from 65% to 72%, and the third letter fades out from 58% to 81%, and so on, and therefore the letters fade out randomly. And that's my animation finished. Now all I need to do is to open Shotcut and apply the HTML file to a clip. I've showed you how to do that in parts 2 and 3, and I'll just remind you of that at the end of this tutorial. But for now, let's take a look at the results so far. Now I'm going to do one more animation for you, and I'm going to apply it to some more footage of Venice, and here it is. Now, as you can see, that was a variation on a theme because it's very similar to the last one I've done. But I wanted to show you how I've adapted it. So here's what it looks like when previewed in Chrome. As you can see, I've given the title a different font and there is vertical and horizontal movement to the text. Also, there's a synchronized fading in and fading out of the subtitle. I'll show you that again. The title moves down, the lines go across, and then the letters of the subtitle fade in. And then the title shoots across to the right, and the subtitle fades out. Now, I'll show you the code for it, which of course is very similar to my previous code. But notice I've changed the font to Scratch My Back. Now, I found that font by opening Print My Fonts, and there it is. Now, I've changed the animation of the letters by changing the keyframes, and I'll just isolate out the letter V and show you what I did to it. Now I'm going to put in an open tag sign and then an exclamation mark and then 2 hyphens like before, and do the same lower down, and this isolates out the letter V and also the green container. Now let's look what happens to the letter V. Between 1% and 7% it goes down from top 0 to top 80, and then from 73% to 93% it goes from left 0 to left 1800. Now I isolate the second letter as well and get this, and you can see from the code that the second letter moves from 2% to 8%, which is 1% later than the first letter, which moved from 1% to 7%. And of course that's the principle of synchronizing the movement. So here's the code with the first 3 letters isolated. As you watch the result, take notice of what happens at the end. The letters will fly off to the right. Now if you compare the code of the letters E and N, you'll notice that whereas the letter E starts moving at 72% and ends at 92%, letter N starts moving at 71% and ends at 91%, which are both 1% less. Now this of course makes the N fly off before the E. Now I'll activate all of the letters and see the result. Here it is. And watch the letters fly off at the end. There they go. Now I just want to show you this code here. This is the code of the Gateway to Italy subtitle, and in the bottom right of the screen you can see now that animation. Now I've changed the ending. I've made the letters fade out in a synchronized way. Just watch the end of that animation again, and there they are, the letters fade from left to right. Now look at the percentages of the keyframes and you can see what I've done. So the letter G starts to fade out at 70% and ends its fade out at 77%. The next letter A starts its fade out at 70.5% and ends at 77.5%. And then the letter T begins at 71 and goes on to 78%. So the common theme is that each fade out lasts for 7% and each letter starts fading out 0.5% later than the previous one, and that gives you this rather fast fade out effect. And let's see it again. Here it goes. There we go. Now I've just got time to show you one more animation. Here it is. Yes folks, we're back to London, City of Dreams. Now the letters fly in from the left, but notice they rotate as well. It's cool. Let's see that again. Here it is. Now here's the code for that. Now it may surprise you to know that it's not that difficult, but you do need to know about this line of code here: WebKit transform rotate 360 degrees. If you have experience with HTML, you may be used to just putting transform rotate instead of WebKit transform rotate. For this to work in WebVFX, you have to put WebKit in front of transform. It's also important to note that you need the capital T for transform. It's what we call camel case. Otherwise it won't work. Now I'm just going to leave you looking at that code and hopefully you can see what's happening. The principle is very similar to the synchronized movements and fade outs we did earlier in this tutorial. Just one thing to notice, that 0 degrees to 360 degrees means a rotation of 1 revolution. And by studying the code you can see that I've combined a left to right movement of each letter with a rotation of 1 revolution. Now my animation is now complete, and all I have to do is to apply it to a clip using Shotcut's overlay HTML filter. I'll just remind you of how to do this. Make sure the WebVFX.js file is in the same folder as your HTML file. Open your clip in Shotcut and drag it to the timeline. Split here and here. Make that section 10 seconds long. Add the overlay HTML filter to that section. Select use WebVFX and confirm, and open your HTML file. Press play to preview the result. When you're happy, export the file as an MP4. And that's it. And here's the final result. And that's all from part 4 for me. Hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching and see you soon. Bye.